In 2009, many Australian and international media were actively talking about the upcoming Toad Day Out. They promised to pay $50 Australian for each cane toad caught in Queensland, plus any participant in Toad Day Out felt like they were saving the whole country from the invasive species invasion. People grabbed nets, buckets, gloves, and headed out for the hunt. This is how it all began over a decade ago. If you think you already know how it all ended, you're mistaken. It's not that simple. But first, coffee. For those who forget to hit the like button, here's an unobtrusive reminder not to forget to do so. So it's been 11 years. The year is 2020, and we're at a zoo in New South Wales, Australia. During a tour, among other animals, they showed people a local endangered frog species, Invasive iteratus. The visitors were shocked because they suddenly realized that they'd been hunting these frogs for several years. They just thought they were cane toads. Thanks to people, the dire situation of Invasive iteratus got even worse. While the toads, basically invasive toads, got a better chance at survival as people were killing off the local frogs. Here's what happens when the media takes on the fight against invasive animals without specifying exactly who to fight against or what this invasive enemy even looks like. And recently, observations have raised concerns that more and more local frogs are falling victim to misidentification. Out of the 32 cane toads caught, more than a third weren't toads at all. Just imagine the shock and horror of the people who genuinely thought they were helping the local wildlife. Maybe we should just tell people to catch toads and bring them to experts so they can figure out what to do with them? No, let's just kill them all.
She said, "What happened?" I said, "We killed it."
Invasive iteratus is now even more at risk since it's often confused with invasive toads. Additionally, those who kill these frogs could be fined up to $1 million or even end up in jail. And it probably makes no difference whether it was intentional or because the poor frog was mistaken for a cane toad, even though telling these two species apart is really tricky. The differences might be hard to spot if you don't know where to look, and a regular person usually doesn't. Here on the left is a stuffed invasive cane toad. On the right is a Invasive iteratus. Of course, if you really look closely, it becomes clear that, for instance, their pupils are different shapes and their coloring is a bit different too. So why do people try to get rid of them? It's simple. The campaign against cane toads has been actively ongoing since 2009. Today, most Australians firmly believe that the cane toad is a pest that needs to be eradicated as soon as possible. And overall, they're right. The cane toads are native to Central and South America and were originally brought to Australia in 1935 to combat a beetle pest on sugarcane fields. As usual, they didn't really help, but some toads escaped into the wild, spread out, and now the invasion can't be stopped. Cane toads are becoming an increasingly serious problem in Australia. The invasion of alien animals is destroying the natural habitat. The number of cane toads is growing at an alarming rate. This warty, poisonous pest threatens entire ecosystems. And so, while some headlines talk about the harm coming from toads, and there are dozens, maybe even hundreds of such headlines, others recommend joining the annual hunt. You remember, right? Nets, buckets, reward for each toad. Campaigns against them are so successful that sometimes more than 50,000 toads can be removed from the environment in a week. Naturally, these successes are reported in the media, but there's a problem. In all these articles, there's not a word about local frogs. Nobody talks about their similarity to toads and that there's a non-zero chance you might catch or even kill the very thing that needs protection. Plus, regular people are invited to join the hunt for toads, and no one gives them a specialist to instruct them. By the way, this would actually help, but there are never enough experts, especially since many people catch and kill cane toads, not just on Toad Day Out, but whenever they come into view. That's why they recommend simply catching toads without killing them and reporting them to special services where they'll definitely figure out who exactly ended up in the net. Any further actions can only be taken if you're 100% sure you didn't catch one of the unfortunate local frogs. Because yes, there's a fine or jail time. I feel sorry for the frogs. However, the whole mix-up with toads and frogs isn't the only case like this, so don't think badly of Australians. In 2012, the state of Utah passed a law protecting the mule deer, while coyotes were designated as pests to be eliminated. Utah lawmakers allocated $500,000 to pay hunters about $50 for each coyote killed. The media promoted this way of earning money, and coyotes began to be hunted en masse. guess who unexpectedly became the victim? Wolves. Wolves are protected by federal law, and hunting them is strictly prohibited. But neither the media nor even the authorities have thought about teaching people how to tell wolves apart from coyotes. Maybe they figured everyone already knows? Either way, people end up killing wolves that are protected. They might think they're doing a good deed and making money, but instead of a cash reward, they risk ending up in court. Things are no less confusing when it comes to crabs. The Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife's Aquatic Invasive Species Unit recently received a report from a concerned member of the public. He claimed to have collected 9 invasive European green crabs from Hood Canal Beach. However, after examining the photograph, department employees quickly determined that these are local crabs common in shallow coastal waters. It's illegal to catch, let alone kill these crabs. European green crabs are considered a globally destructive invasive species that poses a threat to nearly all shallow water creatures. Ironically, the public is asked to do nothing about them for the sake of protecting local crabs. You don't even need to catch or touch them. Just snap a photo and report the location to the department through a special form on the website. Experts assure they'll respond very quickly to confirmed sightings. But perhaps the saddest story of media influencing animal destinies is about the cow-nosed ray. It's this kind of ray with a really funny-looking face. So in 2007, a study came out saying the rays bred in the northwest part of the Atlantic Ocean and ate bivalve mollusks in such quantities that commercial stocks were harmed. This study was impossible not to believe. It was led by one of the world's top marine biologists. The article has become one of the most well-known research works ever done in marine ecology. And in the 9 years since it came out, it's been cited almost 900 times. The media picked up on the results of this study, and active harvesting of rays began in the Chesapeake Bay. They used the slogan, "Save the Bay, eat a ray," and the media consistently referred to cow-nosed rays as invasive species, even though they're very much native. Rays were also described as creatures that were depleting the population of clams, oysters, scallops, lobsters, and crabs in the bay. Basically, they were considered textbook invasive villains. Even nonprofit organizations were convinced of this, helping to promote the idea that rays are an ecological catastrophe. People killed as many rays as they could. Virginia's initiative even went as far as offering free ray meat to restaurants to encourage its consumption. Eating rays and killing them for sport were also promoted as environmentally responsible actions. So if you care about ecology and such, fighting rays is the way to go. Start with yourself. Here's what the Virginia Marine Products board flyer looked like. Just 100 calories per serving. They portrayed rays as an alternative to red meat, one you can cook with various herbs, pair with any sauce, and use in almost any dish. Chefs and customers are thrilled. And if you think there was a lot of effort put into making people eat rays, you're right. The marketing campaign was super aggressive and cost $75,000. Can't imagine any other seafood needing that much hype. Generally speaking, it's worth noting that the idea of eating rays isn't exactly new and certainly not the craziest. In some countries, rays are indeed consumed, for example in Malaysia or Singapore. However, the USA is not among these countries. Also, rays caught during amateur fishing are usually thrown away and not used. Often, the remains become sources of fertilizers. And those who are lured by advertising and try to eat rays will find out they're hard to cook. Only 30 to 34% of the meat is edible, and all these percentages will have a very bitter taste. But advertising's advertising, and it worked. Authorities were very determined to persuade ordinary people to get rid of rays. This might seem like it goes against the usual nature conservation practices, encouraging a decrease in species numbers with human help, but it works. Take lionfish derbies, for instance. Lionfish derbies live in the Pacific and Indian Oceans, but are found in huge numbers in the waters of the Caribbean Basin and the USA. They were apparently introduced by aquarium owners in the 1990s and have been thriving ever since, feeding on young shrimp, crabs, lobsters, and even young reef fish. In short, they're no good, typical invaders, and the most effective way to deal with this species is considered to be competitions and tournaments for their capture and eradication. Overall, it's a practical approach for tackling invasive species, but those rays are local species. And only the new studies from 2016 revealed that rays had nothing to do with the decrease in mollusk numbers. Their population dropped for other reasons, and rays hardly ever feed on mollusks. In short, they're fully exonerated. Biologists immediately opposed all initiatives to exterminate rays, but no one was listening to them. People could not be stopped. The result of flawed research and incorrect conclusions by the media led to uncontrolled commercial fishing. The annual fish catch in Chesapeake Bay alone reached 186 tons. For comparison, the current U.S. federal quota for catching large coastal sharks in the Atlantic is 168.9 tons. The entire Atlantic versus one bay. Feel the difference? But the problem isn't just aggressive, excessive fishing. These ray species take 8 years to mature, and one female can produce only one embryo in 11 to 12 months of pregnancy. It's easy to wipe them out completely. However, every year people gathered in the bay with boats, bows, and arrows to hunt and kill as many rays as possible. You could get a good cash prize for killing the largest rays. Imagine a fleet of 80 boats. Its mission? To find large schools of pregnant rays migrating to the Chesapeake Bay to give birth. When a school is found, participants launch a volley of arrows at close range, killing as many as possible. There have been some very brutal incidents. Only 9 years later did the bans and restrictions finally come into place. As the ultimate result of this whole campaign, the cownose ray is now listed in the red list as a vulnerable species. But even so, the population of rays cannot quickly recover from such events. It's also important where they were killed. Chesapeake Bay is where the rays come to breed. In short, just a really unfortunate chain of events. And if the scientists had taken a bit longer to disprove the first study, the consequences might have been irreversible. Fortunately, there's still hope for now. But scientists now have to catch the rays, tag them, and monitor their well-being, as is usually the case with vulnerable species. And such mistakes happen all the time. In the island nation of Sao Tome and Principe off the West African coast lives a deadly snake. Here it is. It was believed to be an introduced species, the black and white cobra, which, according to legend, was brought to the island by Portuguese farmers, as usual to deal with other pests, rats. But scientists found this legend strange. Why import the deadliest snake in Africa to the island? You'd have to really hate rats and everyone who lives on the island. Fortunately, researchers took a closer look at the snake they found, began to investigate, ran some tests, and unexpectedly realized it was a new, distinct species never before described. It was a unique, local species. In general, you see, they were thrilled. And I'm thrilled that the discovery happened just in time because the island is increasingly focusing on nature conservation, and the local snake would definitely have been at risk of extinction. Also, good thing the media didn't make a big deal about the snake's invasiveness in this remote corner, because you know how it goes. Before you know it, people have wiped out half the population just based on scientists' mistaken opinions or misinterpreted data. Lately, invasive species are getting more media coverage, acknowledged even by scientists. And of course, this coverage could impact the situation. A few years ago, scientists analyzed 194 news articles and 37 research papers about wild boars in Argentina. The majority of scientific papers, specifically 65%, focused on the boar's ecological impact on local species and ecosystems. 21% of the articles were about health impacts, and 8.3% were related to economic consequences. It all seems to make sense. Yet in the media, things look different. 56% of the articles cover economic outcomes, 27% delve into environmental impacts, and 10% discuss health effects. Does this reflect scientists' views and their conclusions? Not entirely. Anyway, double-check the info, guys. Or even better, go straight to the source. You owe me a like. See you later.